international team of researchers led by the British Antarctic Survey, UK's National Polar Research Institute, has embarked on a study to investigate how collapsing Antarctic glaciers can trigger powerful underwater tsunamis and impact climate.
On July 12, 2017, emergency alerts started flooding research stations across Antarctica. Satellite operators couldn't believe what they were seeing. A wall of ice taller than the Empire State Building, a fortress that had stood for over 120,000 years, simply vanished, gone in a matter of hours. When the dust settled and researchers finally got a clear view of what had been hiding behind that collapsed barrier, the discovery triggered emergency meetings at the United Nations, classified briefings to world leaders, and a scientific panic that still hasn't stopped. Because what they found wasn't just unexpected, it was impossible. And the implications for every coastal city on Earth were far worse than anyone had dared to imagine. What I'm about to show you is the full story of what researchers discovered behind that 1,100-foot ice wall and why it sent shockwaves through every government on the planet. This isn't speculation. This isn't theory. This is documented evidence that's rewriting everything we thought we knew about Antarctica and about how much time we actually have left. The collapse. The Larsen Sea Ice Shelf had been Antarctica's guardian for millennia. Picture a wall of ice stretching across an area larger than Delaware, standing over 1,100 feet tall at its thickest points. This wasn't just frozen water. This was a fortress that had protected Antarctica's deepest secrets since before human civilization existed. For over 120,000 years, this barrier had held firm through ice ages, warming periods, and everything in between.
To stand there and see it directly in front of us was incredible. It was really unexpected. It really hit home that we're seeing some rapid changes to the region, and we don't know what the consequences of that will be.
Then something unprecedented happened. Scientists monitoring satellite feeds noticed cracks appearing in the ice. Not small fractures you might expect from natural stress. These were massive rifts that stretched for miles, tearing through the shelf like someone was ripping apart a sheet of paper. Research teams had been tracking a particularly alarming crack for at least 6 months. Every week it grew longer. Every week it grew wider. Everyone knew something catastrophic was coming. They just didn't know when. The waiting game ended on July 12th. The ice shelf literally tore itself apart from the inside. The sound of the collapse was so massive that seismic sensors picked it up from thousands of miles away. When the satellite imagery finally came through, researchers saw something that defied comprehension. A chunk of ice 4 times larger than London had simply broken away and was now floating into the Southern Ocean like it was nothing. The iceberg was designated A68, 1 trillion tons of ice, representing one of the largest calving events ever recorded. For a while, it just sat there, motionless, as if the ice itself couldn't believe what had happened. Then slowly, inevitably, it began drifting northward with the currents, breaking apart into smaller pieces that would create navigation hazards for ships for years to come. But here's the thing. The iceberg itself wasn't what terrified the scientific community. Icebergs break off from Antarctica all the time.
In global warming kind of thing, it's pretty unusual. That's what I mean. I wouldn't believe we'd be down here this time of year.
It's a natural process. What caused the panic was what the collapse exposed. Because when that trillion-ton barrier finally gave way, it revealed a world that no human had ever seen before. The hidden landscape. The first sonar readings came back from the newly exposed seabed, and the research team thought their equipment was malfunctioning. The data showed valleys carved into the bedrock that plunged over 7,000 feet below sea level. That's deeper than the Grand Canyon. Multiple technicians recalibrated their instruments, ran diagnostic tests, double-checked every sensor. The readings were accurate. Antarctica had been hiding a landscape more dramatic than anything on the surface of the continent. Ancient riverbeds snaked across the seafloor in perfect preservation. These weren't small streams or modest waterways. We're talking about massive river systems that once carved through solid rock, creating channels wide enough to swallow entire cities. The last time water flowed through these channels, woolly mammoths were still roaming the earth, and human civilization didn't exist. The mapping revealed mountain ranges that had been completely buried under miles of ice for millions of years. Peaks that would rival the Alps, hidden beneath Antarctica's frozen surface like some lost world from a science fiction novel. The topographic data showed ridges, valleys, and plateaus that created a landscape more complex than Switzerland. An entire mountain range, invisible to humanity for all of recorded history, suddenly exposed to the light. And here's where the first wave of panic started spreading through the scientific community. The coastline we thought we knew doesn't even exist. The real edge of Antarctica, the actual bedrock boundary, sits hundreds of miles inland from where we'd drawn it on our maps. What we'd been looking at all these years was just the edge of the ice sheet. The true Antarctic continent extends much further into what we thought was ocean. Every map of Antarctica ever printed was essentially wrong. Underwater cameras revealed something even more stunning. The seafloor wasn't the smooth, sediment-covered bottom that researchers expected after 120,000 years of being buried under ice. Instead, they found carved bedrock formations that looked like they'd been sculpted by flowing water. Smooth channels, polished stone surfaces, carved basins that showed clear evidence of massive water flow. These weren't gradual geological processes playing out over millions of years. The evidence pointed to catastrophic flooding events that had reshaped the landscape in relatively short periods of time. Water had rushed through these valleys with enough force to carve solid rock, creating underwater canyons that dwarfed anything visible on the surface. The preservation was incredible. Without oxygen, bacteria, or weathering, everything remained exactly as it was when the ice first covered it over 120,000 years ago.
Ground penetrating radar, it scans across the snow, and what we look for is big voids in the glacier.
It was like discovering a frozen moment in Earth's geological history, preserved in perfect detail, waiting to tell its story. But here's what really started the alarm bells ringing in research facilities around the world. The landscape beneath the ice didn't match the climate models. The valleys, the river systems, the carved bedrock. All of it suggested that Antarctica had experienced periods of dramatic warming and cooling that happened much faster than anyone had predicted. Much, much faster. Life in the impossible. The first underwater robot to explore the caverns beneath the collapsed ice sent back footage that left the research team speechless. In the pitch-black depths, where no sunlight had penetrated for over 120,000 years, life was thriving. This was supposed to be impossible. Massive tube worms, some over 6 feet long, swayed in the current like underwater trees. These weren't the small creatures you might find in a shallow tide pool. These were giants perfectly adapted to survive in complete darkness at crushing depths. Their bodies were translucent, revealing internal structures that pulsed with bioluminescent light, creating their own illumination in a world of perpetual night. The seafloor was carpeted with bacterial mats that glowed in brilliant colors: electric blues, neon greens, deep purples, colors that created an alien landscape more beautiful than anything in a tropical coral reef. These organisms had evolved in complete isolation, cut off from the rest of Earth's biosphere for millennia, developing in ways that no scientist had predicted. The crazy part was figuring out how they were surviving. No sunlight, no oxygen from photosynthesis, crushing pressure that would kill a human instantly. These creatures had found a completely different way to live. They were feeding off chemical energy from the Earth itself. Methane was seeping up from cracks in the bedrock, creating underwater oases where life clustered in. Impossible abundance. The gas provided fuel for bacteria, which formed the base of an entire ecosystem that had never been touched by solar energy. It was like discovering a parallel version of life on Earth, one that had developed completely independently from everything else we knew. DNA analysis of the specimens revealed something that shouldn't exist according to our understanding of evolution. These organisms weren't just adapted to extreme conditions. They were genetically distinct from anything else on the planet. Some species showed genetic markers that suggested they had been isolated for far longer than the Ice Age. We're talking about creatures that evolved separately from the rest of life on Earth, developing in complete darkness for hundreds of thousands of years. Their genetic code told a story of adaptation that challenged everything we knew about life's limits. The bacterial communities were particularly stunning. They'd formed complex structures that looked like underwater cities.
We're heading to Elephant Island, which, as I'm sure you know, is where Shackleton's men were famously stranded from the Endurance expedition.
Towering spires of living organisms that created their own microenvironments. Some areas showed evidence of symbiotic relationships between different species that had evolved together in isolation, cooperating in ways we'd never seen before. The methane seeps weren't random either. They followed patterns along the ancient riverbeds, suggesting that the same geological features that once carried surface water were now channeling gases from deep within the Earth. The landscape was still active, still changing, still alive with energy even after being buried under miles of ice. The diversity was mind-blowing. Every dive revealed new species, new adaptations, new ways that life had found to survive in conditions that would kill most organisms on the surface. Creatures with no eyes but enhanced chemical sensors that could detect prey from hundreds of meters away. Organisms that could withstand pressure that would crush a submarine. Life forms that generated their own. Light in a world of perpetual darkness. But perhaps the most significant discovery was evidence that these ecosystems weren't struggling to survive. They were thriving. The biomass in some areas exceeded what you'd find in productive ocean environments on the surface. These weren't the last remnants of ancient life clinging to existence. This was a vibrant, complex ecosystem that had been flourishing in secret beneath the ice. The implications sent shockwaves through the scientific community. If life could thrive in these conditions on Earth, what did that mean for the possibility of life in similar environments on other planets? The discoveries beneath Antarctica weren't just rewriting our understanding of our own planet. They were expanding our concept of where life might exist throughout the universe. Antarctica's impossible past. The living ecosystems were just part of the story. As researchers pushed deeper into the newly exposed caverns, they started finding evidence of Antarctica's impossible past. Evidence that would fundamentally change our understanding of how quickly our planet can transform. Fossilized tree trunks were discovered perfectly preserved in the ice, telling a story that defied everything we thought we knew about the continent. These weren't small shrubs or hardy plants that might survive in harsh conditions. We're talking about massive temperate forest trees, oak, beech, pine, species that belonged in places like North America or Europe, not the frozen bottom of the world. The preservation was so complete that scientists could still see the tree rings, count the seasons, analyze the growth patterns from millions of years ago. The data revealed something extraordinary. These forests had thrived in Antarctica when the continent was positioned much closer to the equator, before the slow drift of plate tectonics carried it to the bottom of the world. Leaf fossils showed intricate detail down to the cellular level, ferns with fronds the size of dinner tables, flowering plants that belonged in tropical rainforests. The ice had created a time capsule that preserved an entire ecosystem in perfect detail for millions of years. And here's where the panic really started to spread. Some of these specimens were found in layers that suggested rapid burial, not the gradual accumulation of sediment over thousands of years. Catastrophic events that had buried entire forests almost instantly. The evidence pointed to climate shifts that happened far more quickly than our current models predicted. Pollen samples revealed seasonal patterns that painted a picture of Antarctica's ancient climate: warm summers, mild winters, rainfall patterns that supported lush vegetation across the entire continent. This wasn't the gradual transition from temperate to frozen that scientists had assumed. The data showed periods of dramatic change that transformed the landscape in geological moments. The most stunning discovery came from sediment cores that revealed Antarctica's position during different geological periods. When these forests were growing, the continent wasn't just warmer, it was positioned in completely different latitudes. The slow dance of continental drift had carried this landmass from tropical regions to its current polar position over millions of years. But here's where it gets really wild. Some of the preserved landscapes showed evidence of rapid climate oscillations. Layers of tropical vegetation followed immediately by evidence of glaciation, then back to temperate forests, then frozen again. The continent had experienced climate swings that would make our current concerns about global warming look gradual by comparison. Ancient riverbeds contained sediments that told stories of massive flooding events. Not the kind of flooding we see from heavy rains, but continental-scale deluges that had reshaped entire landscapes in days or weeks. The geological evidence suggested that Antarctica had experienced periods where ice sheets melted completely, creating inland seas and river systems that dwarfed anything on the modern continent. Preserved in the ice were also specimens that shouldn't exist according to our understanding of evolution and migration patterns. Plant species that showed genetic connections to flora found in South America, Africa, and Australia. Evidence of when these continents were connected as the supercontinent Gondwana, sharing species across land masses that are now separated by thousands of miles of ocean. The time capsule effect of ice preservation had created a museum of Earth's history that spanned millions of years. Each layer revealed a different chapter in the planet's story, from tropical paradise to frozen wasteland and everything in between. But the discoveries weren't just rewriting textbooks about continental drift and the history of life on Earth. They were revealing something far more urgent, far more immediate, and far more terrifying. The worldwide panic. Here's where everything changes. Here's why governments around the world started holding emergency meetings and why classified briefings were delivered to world leaders. The climate models that scientists had been using to predict global warming were built on assumptions about how ice sheets behave. Those models assume gradual melting over centuries, giving humanity time to adapt. The evidence from beneath the collapsed ice walls shattered those assumptions completely. The preserved geological record showed that ice sheets don't always melt gradually. They can collapse catastrophically, not over centuries, not even over decades. In some cases, the evidence showed massive ice sheet collapses that happened in years or even months. The Larsen C collapse was just the beginning. The same conditions that caused that trillion-ton iceberg to break away are now affecting ice shelves across Antarctica. And the most alarming target is a glacier that scientists have already nicknamed the Doomsday Glacier. The Thwaites Glacier is showing the exact same stress fractures that preceded the Larsen C collapse, the same patterns, the same warning signs. But Thwaites isn't just any glacier. Thwaites alone contains enough ice to raise global sea levels by over 2 feet if it collapses completely. But that's not even the worst part. Thwaites acts like a cork in a bottle, holding back a much larger ice sheet behind it. If Thwaites goes, it triggers a cascade effect. The West Antarctic ice sheet, which Thwaites is currently restraining, contains enough frozen water to raise sea levels by over 10 feet. Think about what that means for every coastal city on Earth. New York, Miami, Los Angeles, London, Shanghai, Mumbai, Tokyo, Bangkok. Every coastal metropolitan area housing hundreds of millions of people, underwater, not in some distant future, potentially within our lifetimes. The newly exposed landscapes revealed how this process unfolds. Warm ocean water is flooding into caverns beneath the ice, melting the glaciers from below at rates that make surface melting look insignificant. The glaciers aren't just melting from the top down, they're being eaten away from underneath, weakening their foundations until they collapse suddenly and catastrophically. The ancient riverbeds and Kar valleys show that this has happened before, and when it does, the changes are rapid and irreversible. Here's the data that triggered the worldwide panic. The geological evidence from beneath the collapsed ice walls shows that sea level rise during previous ice sheet collapses happened at rates of several feet per decade, not per century. Per decade. In some cases, the evidence suggests rises of several meters in less than 100 years. Our current models predicted gradual change that would give coastal cities time to adapt, time to build seawalls, time to relocate populations, time to prepare. The evidence from Antarctica suggests we may not have that time. The ice sheet collapses shown in the geological record happened fast, without warning, and with devastating consequences. Research vessels from around the world rushed to the site after the Larsen C collapse. Underwater robots were deployed to explore caverns that had been sealed off since before humans walked the Earth. The race wasn't just about scientific discovery anymore, it was about gathering enough data to understand how much time humanity actually has. Every dive revealed something that challenged our understanding. Every sample brought back forced scientists to revise their predictions downward. The comfortable timelines disappeared. The reassuring projections evaporated. The discoveries beneath Antarctica's ice are forcing us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Our planet's climate system is far more dynamic and unpredictable than we realized. The ice walls that collapsed weren't just barriers protecting ancient landscapes. They were barriers protecting us from understanding how quickly our world can change. The race against time. The race to document these discoveries has become urgent. Every month brings new ice shelf collapses, exposing more hidden landscapes that begin changing immediately once they're flooded with warm water. Scientists estimate they have maybe a decade to fully explore and catalog these environments before they're transformed beyond recognition. But the discoveries also offer something unexpected: hope. The thriving ecosystems found in the pitch-black depths prove that life can adapt to conditions far more extreme than we ever imagined. Creatures flourishing where we thought nothing could survive. Complex ecosystems thriving in complete darkness. Life finding a way in the most hostile environment on Earth. As our planet changes, these findings expand our understanding of where and how life might survive. The resilience discovered beneath Antarctica suggests that even in the worst-case scenarios, life will find a way to continue. The question is whether human civilization will be among the survivors. The evidence emerging from beneath the ice is clear. Antarctica's remaining ice barriers are under stress. The same conditions that triggered the Larsen C collapse are spreading. The Thwaites Glacier is showing warning signs that can no longer be ignored. And the geological record shows us exactly what happens when these systems fail. What happens next depends on how fast we can learn from these revelations and adapt to a planet that's already in the process of dramatic transformation. The secrets emerging from beneath Antarctica's ice walls have fundamentally changed our understanding of our planet. What was supposed to be a frozen, barren wasteland has revealed itself as a time capsule of Earth's history, a laboratory of impossible life, and a warning about our future. The 1,100-foot ice wall that collapsed in 2017 exposed a hidden world that rewrites everything we thought we knew. Ancient landscapes, carved by catastrophic floods, thriving ecosystems in conditions where life shouldn't exist, geological evidence of climate changes that happened faster than our models predicted. The worldwide panic wasn't about what happened, it was about what's coming next. As more barriers collapse, we're going to discover landscapes and ecosystems that further rewrite our understanding of Earth's history and life's possibilities. The hidden world beneath the ice is already changing our climate models and expanding our concept of where life can thrive. But the most important revelation is also the most terrifying. The ice that remains is vulnerable. The same processes that collapsed the Larsen C ice shelf are already affecting glaciers that contain enough frozen water to reshape every coastline on Earth. What other secrets are waiting beneath Antarctica's remaining ice walls? What will we find as the continent continues to unveil itself? And, most importantly, how much time do we actually have? Before the next collapse changes everything, let me know your thoughts below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more discoveries that challenge everything we thought we knew about our planet.